Pollen grains. Pollen grains are male gametophyte, spherical in shape. They are spherical in shape. We know that how the pollen grains have been formed. As the anther get matures, the microspores get detached from each other and they develop into a pollen grains. These pollen grains are normally formed by the process of microsporogenesis. It is the process of formation of microspore from pollen mother cell through meiosis. Okay. This represent the male gamete. We know that pollen grains mainly represent the male gamete. They are spherical in shape and have a two-layered wall. They mainly consist of the two-layered wall. They are exine and intine. Exine mainly is the outer layer. Intine is the inner layer. How is the exine present? Exine is a hard layer made up of sporopollenin. Exine, it is mainly a hard layer, tough layer. It is not easily breakable, very hard layer which is made up of sporopollenin, which is extremely resistant, means which can be opposed, which can be stay calmly throughout, withstand with high temperatures, which has acidic, alkaline conditions. It can withstand with this type of conditions and also enzymatic condition. Now intine, which is the inner layer of the pollen grains. It is very thin and continuous layer made up of cellulose and pectin. Intine is a thin layer. It is thin layer, whereas exine is a hard layer. Intine is a continuous layer which is made up of cellulose and pectin, whereas exine, which is the outer layer, it is made up of sporopollenin. Intine, it is made up of cellulose and pectin. There are two layered wall in the pollen grain. Those are exine and intine are the two layers, and if a mature pollen grains is formed, then the mature pollen grains contains two types of cell. Mature pollen grain mainly contains two types of cell. They are vegetative cell and generative cell. Look at the structure of vegetative and generative cell. These are vegetative cell and these are generative cell. These are generative cells. Okay. Now let us find out the functions of vegetative and generative cell. Vegetative cell, large with irregular nucleus, contains food reserves. Look at this structure. It is large and also with the irregular nucleus. See, nucleus is mainly irregular and they mainly contains reserved food. Food is reserved in the vegetative cell. Next, second important type of a mature cell is generative cell. It is a very small. Look here. It is very small, right? And also floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. It mainly floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. These two are very important points of these pollen grains. In 60% of the angiosperms, pollen grains are shed at two-celled stage. What happens in the 60% of the angiosperms? 60% of the angiosperms. Angiosperms are the flowering plants. Pollen grains are shed at two-celled stage. They mainly shed at two-celled stage. While in others means in 40%. In 40% of generative cells, only in the generative cells undergoes mitosis. It will undergo mitosis. What happens if it undergoes mitosis? It will form two male gametes. What are two male gametes? It is a three-celled stage. In 60% of the angiosperms, pollen grains shed at two-celled stage, while in other generative cell, it will undergo mitosis to form two male gametes, and three-celled stage they will shed. The viability of pollen grains after they shed depends upon temperature and humidity. Okay, the viability, there is a range of working range of pollen grains after they shed depends mainly on temperature and humidity. These are the two important characters where the viability of the pollen grains depends. It ranges from 30 minutes to few months. It mainly ranges from 30 to 5 months. Okay. Microsporogenesis. We know that microsporogenesis is the process of formation of a microspore from pollen mother cell through the help of meiosis. Here, thousands of pollen grains formed inside a microsporangium released with the dehiscence of anther. We know that pollen grains formed are released with the dehiscence of anther inside a microsporangium. Know that pollen effect on human. Let us learn what are the effects of pollen on human. Pollen grains cause allergy and bronchial affections. These pollen grains mainly causes allergy to human beings, some type of allergies, and also bronchial afflictions. This will lead to the chronic respiratory disorders like asthma, bronchitis. Example, parathenium. What is parathenium? It is a carrot grass. Pollen grains also causes allergy as well as some bronchial afflictions which will lead to the chronic respiratory disorders like asthma, etc. Next, what are the pollen products formed? Pollen products. The pollen products have been formed. They will be very rich in nutrient. They produces nutrient, and they also pollen. These tablets are mainly used as tablets, pollen tablets and syrup. They mainly use as pollen tablets, syrup, food supplements. Claims to increase the performance of athletes. They will help people to increase the performance of athletes and also the race horse. Okay, what is the period of viability? Once one shed, the pollen grains have to land on the stigma before they lose viability if they have to bring about fertilization. If the pollens have to bring out fertilization process, then they have to land on stigma before the viability. Okay, period of viability depends mainly on temperature and humidity. Example, 20 minutes. And members of Rosaceae, Leguminoscae, Solancae take month. These are some of the examples. Next, pollen grains stored by cryopreservation. Pollen grains are mainly stored in cryopreservation used in crop breeding programs. They are mainly used in crop breeding programs. These are mainly useful in meat.